The story of New York's architecture begins with the arrival of the Dutch settlers in the early 1600s. Known as New Amsterdam during this period, the city's early structures were simple, functional buildings made from locally sourced materials like stone, wood, and brick. These buildings were primarily residential and utilitarian, designed to serve the basic needs of the growing community. Dutch colonial architecture. The Dutch settlers built modest homes that were designed for practicality. The most common style was the Dutch colonial style, which is recognized by its steeply pitched roof, dormer windows, and brick or stone exteriors. The oldest surviving example of Dutch colonial architecture in New York is the Van Cortlandt Manor in the Bronx, dating back to the late 1600s. Georgian and federal styles. As New York came under British control in the late 1600s, the city's architecture evolved to reflect the Georgian and federal styles. The federal style, particularly, became popular in the late 18th century. Characterized by symmetry, brick facades, and simple yet elegant detailing, federal architecture can be seen in structures such as Federal Hall in Lower Manhattan, the site where George Washington was sworn in as the first president of the United States. The 19th century marked a period of massive industrialization and urbanization in New York City. The city's population surged, and the demand for office space, housing, and infrastructure grew exponentially. The architectural response to these challenges would change the city's skyline forever. Brownstones and row houses. The residential architecture of the 19th century became synonymous with the brownstone row house. The row houses, built from reddish-brown sandstone, became popular for middle and upper-class families in neighborhoods such as the Upper West Side and Brooklyn Heights. The brownstone style was largely influenced by the federal style but incorporated Victorian elements such as intricate ironwork and bay windows. The invention of the skyscraper. The real transformation of New York's architectural landscape came with the advent of the skyscraper in the late 19th century. Innovations in steel frame construction, along with the invention of the elevator, made it possible to build taller buildings. The first true skyscraper was the Home Insurance Building in Chicago, 1885, but New York quickly adopted this new technology. By the early 20th century, skyscrapers were beginning to dominate the city's skyline. Landmarks like the Flatiron Building, 1902, designed by Daniel Burnham, and the Woolworth Building, 1913, designed by Cass Gilbert, were among the tallest buildings in the world at the time. These buildings represented the economic boom of the period and set the stage for the skyscraper-heavy skyline we associate with New York today. The 1920s and 1930s are often regarded as the golden age of New York architecture, particularly due to the explosion of the Art Deco style, which became synonymous with the city's identity. Art Deco and the birth of iconic landmarks during this period. Many of New York's most famous buildings were constructed, including the Chrysler Building, 1930, and the Empire State Building, 1931. These skyscrapers were not just feats of engineering but were also designed with a distinct aesthetic in mind. The Chrysler Building, with its gleaming steel spire and intricate ornamentation, is one of the finest examples of Art Deco architecture in the world. Similarly, the Empire State Building stood as the tallest building in the world for nearly 40 years and is considered one of the most iconic structures ever built. Art Deco characteristics. The Art Deco style is characterized by bold geometric shapes, streamlined forms, and the use of luxurious materials like marble, stainless steel, and glass. The Rockefeller Center, completed in the 1930s, embodies these characteristics, featuring towering buildings, large public spaces, and exquisite decoration. The Radio City Music Hall, also part of the Rockefeller Center, is another prime example of the period's architectural grandeur. 4. Post-war architecture and the rise of modernism, 1940 to 1970. The post-World War II era in New York City was marked by the rise of modernist architecture. During this period, architects embraced simplicity, function, and the use of new materials like glass and concrete. Modernism and the glass box. One of the most influential styles of this period was International style, which emphasized clean lines, open spaces, and the use of industrial materials. The Seagram Building, 1958, designed by Mies van der Rohe and Philip Johnson, is often regarded as one of the defining works of modernist architecture. The building's sleek glass and steel facade, set back from the street with a plaza in front, redefined the concept of urban space. Brutalism and the shift toward concrete in the 1960s and 1970s. Brutalism emerged as a controversial architectural style, characterized by the use of raw concrete and angular forms. Buildings like the Metropolitan Correctional Center, 1975, and the New York Public Library's 42nd Street branch, 1911, with modern renovations, reflect this trend. While brutalism was often criticized for its heavy, monolithic appearance, it nonetheless had a significant impact on New York's architecture. By the 1970s, a new wave of architects began to challenge the austere modernist aesthetic, leading to the rise of postmodern architecture. This era was characterized by a return to ornamentation, historical references, and playful experimentation with form and color. Postmodernism and eclectic design. Postmodern architecture in New York includes buildings such as the AT&T Building, now Sony Tower, designed by Philip Johnson. The building, completed in 1984, features a distinctive broken pediment at the top, drawing inspiration from classical architecture. The Sony Tower was one of the first major examples of postmodernism in New York, and its playful approach to design made it a landmark. Contemporary architecture. At the turn of the 21st century, the city saw the rise of new architectural trends, including high-tech architecture, which integrates technology into the building's design. Notable examples include the Time Warner Center, 2004, and the Bank of America Tower, 2009. These buildings combine innovative materials with environmentally conscious design. 6. The new millennium and rebuilding. After the 9th of November, the events of September 11, 2001, brought a dramatic shift to New York's architectural landscape. The destruction of the World Trade Center led to a global conversation about architecture, security, and rebuilding. Rebuilding Ground Zero. In the aftermath of the attacks, a massive effort was launched to rebuild the World Trade Center site. The result is the One World Trade Center, 2014, also known as the Freedom Tower. Designed by architect David Childs, it incorporates elements of modern architecture, with a glass and steel exterior, but it also features symbolic elements that represent resilience and hope. The Freedom Tower, along with the National September 11th Memorial designed by Michael Arad, stands as a testament to the city's recovery. The history of architecture in New York City is a story of continual evolution. From the modest Dutch colonial buildings of the 1600s to the glittering glass towers of today, the city's architectural landscape reflects the changing times, technologies, and cultures that have shaped it. As New York moves into the future, its skyline will continue to evolve, incorporating new ideas, materials, and technologies, while preserving the historic landmarks that make the city unique.